Right, so this is us when we crossed the DMZ in 2015. So this idea of women mobilizing to end the Korean War, it actually came to me in the form of a dream. And I was actually, before I started Women Cross DMZ, I'd worked I had two lives. One was I was a women's peace activist or women's activist. I worked at the Global Fund for Women in San Francisco, which is the largest fund, women's fund, supporting women's organizing around the world. And then by moonlight, I was a Korea peace activist. It was sort of like my dual identity is like fighting for women's rights, but also like fighting for peace on the Korean Peninsula. And so we screened this film that included the story of Liberian women and Lema Gabowi, who ultimately won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work. But, it's about ordinary women and people mobilizing across religious lines to see peace. And so it so deeply moved and inspired me that night I went home and I had this dream, and I'd woken up in the middle of the night. I turned on my computer, and there was on the home screen of the New York Times this story about flooding that was happening on the Korean Peninsula, and it was during Kim Jong-un and Lee Myung-bak, who was the conservative president in South Korea, and they weren't talking. The hotlines were shut down, and so the flooding led to, many people in South Korea drowned. And so I just remember reading this article and just thinking, gosh, why can't one guy just pick up the phone and call the other guy? And so I then had this dream. And the dream was that I was wading in the river, in the Imjin River, which runs north and south through the heart of the Korean Peninsula. And I saw in my dream these people coming down the river holding the light, and then that eventually morphed into family reunions. And I just remembered it was so powerful, but I thought, where's that light coming from? So I wanted to go up the river, and that's when I came to the source of the light, which was a circle of women. And that's when I woke up and I said, oh, I know who will end the Korean War. Women will end the Korean War. And I thought, well, how are we going to end the Korean War? So I began to do some research, and I found that actually the first meeting of North and South Korean women was facilitated by a Japanese woman who was a member of the Diet at the time. And so this is actually last year actually was the 30th anniversary of that very first meeting. And this is actually one of the meetings that took place at Panmunjom between North and South Korean women during those roundtables. And I thought, oh my gosh, in times of impasse, yes, when there are great sunshine policies and North and South Korea are flowing, they don't need help. What they need is the US and outside countries to get out of the way. But in times of impasse, we have a role to play. And so I remember seeing this quote from Gloria Steinem: without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities. Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. And I stuck it on my computer and I began the process of organizing this peace walk. So fast forward, we already know this. We are in a state of war because the armistice was signed, never a peace agreement. And so we are now in its 72nd year of this unresolved war. And so we set out to cross the DMZ to bring global attention to this war and to the division of Korea that was tragically done by Cold War powers, the United States and the former Soviet Union. So this was us when we crossed the DMZ. We held women's peace symposiums in Pyongyang and also in Seoul. And Ayoung was on that journey. We held peace walks in Pyongyang, in Kaesong, and in Paju. And I love this picture of the woman on the bottom right, because you could see this was in Kaesong. She probably was born in Korea before it was divided. And so just the power of doing this act, I think, is really important to reimagine what ordinary people can do and the importance of eliminating a man-made division that has kept millions of Korean people separated. So since then, yep.
Christine, I don't think we're only seeing the first picture, so you might need to try sharing again and finding the right one.
Okay, sorry about that, you guys. Is this working now?
Yes, that's better.
I'm so sorry. Here
That's
I've been
okay.
talking with all these images. So anyway, here we are at the present. This was in 2019. We decided we're going to launch a global campaign called Korea Peace Now, Women Mobilizing to End the War. And so we started with this inaugural congressional briefing in Washington, D.C. We brought South Korean women members of parliament and activists, and we met with U.S. Congresswomen, and we held launches in New York, in Ottawa, Canada, and also in Seoul, South Korea. And we've been trying to engage with all of the leaders. So that was Matthew Pottinger. I'm a little embarrassed to be standing so closely to him because many of you may know he's quite the China hawk. But Stephen Biegun was actually a decent diplomat in the Trump administration. Moon Jae-in, who we know is the senior envoy to President Moon on North Korea. And the last time I actually met with the North Koreans, I had to travel all the way to Cambodia because of the US travel ban on Americans going to North Korea. So this was actually right before the pandemic in December of 2019. But what we've been doing is we bring women together. We brought women together in Indonesia, in Seoul during the 2018 Pyongyang, the North-South summits, supporting the peace process, and again in China, Northeast Asian women. And we just keep bringing women together to dialogue and to think through another way to end this war. And we really believe it's important to change the narrative because this is a war that has been going on for 70 years. North Korea is so vilified and demonized. And so we believe it's important to write op-eds and to produce reports like the human and gendered impact of sanctions on North Korea, which got some good coverage. Ayoung and Doug is very effective in doing this, but engaging Thomas Quintana, who was the UN Special Rapporteur on situation in North Korea. And so he has actually shifted his position, looking at how the unresolved war impacts the human rights of North Korean people. And last year, we released this big report called Path to Peace, where we make the case for a peace agreement to end the Korean War. And so what we believe is really important to organize women, because we know that when women are involved in peace processes, it actually leads to a peaceful outcome. And I love this, but we haven't been invited to the table. Very few cases have women sat at the table. But I think this bottom statistic is really interesting. It comes from Georgetown University, where they found that between 1991 and 2017, women's groups were involved in 71% of informal peace processes. This includes groups like Maud's groups and Sally's organizing and Ayoung's longtime work for Comfort Women Justice. This is the work that we do. And that actually, when we do this, this is actually part of building the political will for peace. And so this is Joe Cirincione, who used to be the former president of Plowshares. And to have him have said, women across DMZ have convincingly demonstrated that we cannot end North Korea's nuclear program without a comprehensive peace. That was a really game-changing moment for us, where we saw the nuclear disarmament community recognize you cannot eliminate North Korea's nuclear program without peace. And so what we've been doing is we've been mobilizing. You know, you've been doing this. You have been doing a fabulous job in New York. And we have been building the political will for a peace agreement by engaging Congress. And so we have the House Resolution 3446, Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act. I believe now that there are 34 co-sponsors, and New York has been an incredible champion in grassroots organizing. But this is the landscape of the Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network. We have all these chapters around the country. Alicia and Echo are doing incredible work to inspire and mobilize people. This is before the pandemic, but some of the activities that the Grassroots Network does. And this is a screenshot of the Hawaii delegation that for the last advocacy day. And I have to say that the bottom right woman is Carol Lee. She's Korean Chinese. She's a student at UH. And she talked about how the unresolved war impacts her and her family. And as a result of that, Mazie Hirono introduced the Divided Families Act in the Senate. We hope that she will consider introducing a Senate version. We're not quite there yet, but that's why it takes our grassroots organizing. And I'm almost done here, but I think these are really important studies that recently came out that show the changing political discourse in this country that favors peace. So one was the study by AFSC, which says that at least 1 in 2 Americans believe that the US should establish a diplomatic liaison office in North Korea, that we should support the reunion of divided Korean American families. And then I love this is the Eurasia Group, which has been coming out with very interesting surveys, but this, I think the most interesting for me is that twice as many, so first of all, they say 70% believe that we should negotiate directly with our adversaries, whether they're human rights abusers or home to terrorists. I think that says a huge sign of how Americans are sick of endless war. The other is that 2/3 of Americans under 30, this is a signal of where this country is going, believe that the US should respond to China's rise by decreasing US military presence in Asia. I think that says a lot about how educated people are and that are concerned about the US pivot to Asia. We've been doing some work also with Madre and Grassroots Global Justice Alliance to try to have a movement-driven foreign policy, to try to democratize this process that has largely been in the hands of retired, of the State Department, of the military industrial complex. If we could tell the story of what US foreign policy does, not just to Korea or Okinawa or Guam or all around the world, but also how it's impacting our ability to have a decent, good society at home. This is the work that we have to do together. So we've been, trying to cultivate new leaders, younger peace activists. So we had the first cohort of activists, and I think that's basically the presentation. I'm going to stop right there, and then I'm going to just close with some, I think, some steps for us as a peace movement that is largely led and driven by grassroots communities. And I think that we are in a really precarious and dangerous place. We saw a Biden administration, a Democratic administration, introduce a budget and a Congress increase the military budget significantly. That does not bode well, I think, for our peace movement. It does not bode well for the resources that we need to have a decent and good society. So I think that is a real challenge for us. And Korea, I think we know that it's, 60%, it started in the Obama administration, but 60% of the US military shifting from Middle East and Europe to the Asia Pacific is a very dangerous precedence. And I think that the Korean Peninsula has been caught in that Cold War. And I think that if we could frame it differently, that actually peace on the Korean Peninsula could be the great neutralizer in the great power competition between the US and China. And so the Korean War, being the grandfather of all wars, its ending could be symbolic because it inaugurated the US military industrial complex, but it could also play a really important role in seeing a different future for Northeast Asia and the US role in the Asia Pacific. So there is a lot of work to be done. I am excited that this new documentary film by Deanne Bourchier-Lim is coming out. It just premiered in Hawaii in November. It's called Crossings. She is going, by the urging of AM, she's going to do a national screening. I hope to do it next month with all of you so that everybody can, I think, both get a beautiful rewriting of history and what happened to the Korean War and the impact that it's still having on people's lives. But I think you'll see how inspiring all of you are, that the grassroots movement, that is the heart and soul of the peace movement for peace on the Korean Peninsula, is so vital to Koreans in both North and South Korea. And that really, if we look back just a few years ago to 2018, when North and South Korea, when Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in signed the Panmunjom Declaration, signed the Pyongyang Declaration, where the two militaries signed military agreements to actually disarm and begin to defuse landmines and begin the process of demilitarizing the DMZ, that was truncated and aborted because of the US. So as much as the Korean people want peace, the US is very much standing in the way. So that's why our organizing and our mobilizing is so critical. And it's not just because we want to support the Korean people who want to live in peace, but it's also because that unresolved war is what is being used constantly to vilify North Korea, China, and to justify a forever military occupation in the region. So I think what we need to do is we need to keep engaging and understanding how the new Cold War is being played out. We should continue to build, as we are doing with other peace and anti-war movements, to stop the US war plans against China. And, you know, an end of war declaration is not enough. That is what the Biden administration, we haven't even seen a draft of it, but I think, and many progressive analysts believe, that it's just posturing, that the Biden administration is just using that to kick the ball into North Korea's court. We haven't seen what North Korea thinks about the end of war declaration. So far, it's been very lukewarm. But if an end of war declaration is signed, we think that actually that could play a significant role towards normalizing and towards the eventual signing of a peace agreement, but that it could also play a significant role in disrupting the US war plans in the region. So I'm really excited to see all of you. I'm really excited that I hope once we're out of this pandemic that we can screen virtually or in person crossings, and that we can mobilize more people to join us in our hard, ambitious, but realistic goal to bring an end to the Korean War. So I think I'm going to end right there. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with all of you. And thank you for your work. You don't have to do this, but we couldn't do this without you, you know? So I'm just so deeply grateful to all of you for your time and commitment and inspiration.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Christine. I'm going to turn it over to Sally, because I hope what you've heard and what you've all been thinking about will result in some good questions. Not to put Christine on the spot, but we'd like to hear what you guys, we want to know. And Sally, you want to take it?
Yes. Thank you so much, Christine. So, you know, we can get questions. I'm going to take off any spotlight. You can go into gallery view up at the top where it has view, so you can see everybody. And if you have a question, there's the easiest way, if you can figure it out, is to go down to the bottom of your screen where you see something that says reactions, and press it. And then you see all these options. Use the raise hand option. And when you're done, you can go back and lower your hand, or I can lower your hand, and then the next person can come. So while we're waiting for you to raise your hand, if that doesn't work, just raise your hand like this. We have a question already. So I'm going to hold my question and go to Maud. So don't forget to unmute. Not take your picture away, but unmute.
Sorry about that. I have a question about this idea of reframing the new Cold War and how a peace settlement in Korea could move that forward, because I totally agree that that's the big issue that peace activists need to be concerned about right now. Can you expand on your thinking about that?
Oh, I wish, Maud. I think we should brainstorm together, but I just feel that, right now, when we look at what is happening in terms of the vilification of China, and of course, with that comes along North Korea, that there is no end game but war, right? And so if we could actually see through, when we look at the first US Sino War, it was actually a Korean War, right? And so that Cold War never really ended on the Korean Peninsula. And that there have actually been moments and opportunities when peace on the Korean Peninsula was actually possible. And so what would that do in terms of actually diminishing the US justification for maintaining its US militarization and arms buildup in the region? I just think that it could have this incredible reversal of domino effect. And I know it sounds impossible, but how could we possibly connect all the communities between the United States and across the Asia Pacific to actually say the vision that is laid out by China and the vision that is laid out by the United States is not a vision that none of us want, we don't want to be living, we want to live sovereign, and we want to live in a different kind of future than this kind of authoritarian or capitalist or neoliberal vision. And so I just think that peace on the Korean Peninsula could be an incredibly neutralizing force that can show that there is another way forward. I don't know. It's like I've heard many different theories or proposals, but one is that of like a Switzerland, that the Korean Peninsula could be the Switzerland of Europe, to have a non-aligned peninsula. And I think this is where we need to be collectively thinking together. And Maud, you and David have been working on this issue and thinking about this for so long. So, I really invite you to think along together with us, because we need deep expertise. We need deep wisdom to help us with the framing and the analysis together.
That's great. So I see we have some new people that joined us, and I'm very excited to see you here. So let's just take one little minute, and we have with Michelle, Subak, and Teresa, if you can just give like a 30-second intro to us, and then we'll go to Young Soon.
Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Stanley. I was the one who was on the phone. 174454307. I'm in Bronx, New York, and I'm a friend.
Oh, very good. Great. I'm glad you're with us. Thank you so much. I actually thought you were a different Michelle. It's so funny.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
thank you. It's really great to meet you, Michelle. You should make sure you put your email in the chat so we can add you to our group. And Sobak, and then Teresa.
Hi, everybody.
Sobak first, then Teresa.
Okay. This is Subak. How are you, everybody? It's so nice meeting you again. I belong to June 15 New York Committee. I just changed my the name down there. It's really wonderful, the learning. This year, we make a one step toward reunification of Korea. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Teresa?
Hi, I'm Teresa Brooks, and I think I've met you, Sally, at All Souls Church. I'm very involved in the Nuclear Disarmament Task Force at All Souls and through other organizations. And I know Aon and got the invitation through her, and I'm very glad to be here and want to support the efforts however I can, and also draw in the people that I work with almost on a day-to-day basis with this effort. So that's my only thinking. I live in New York.
Well, wonderful, Teresa.
Thank you for the event.
And if you'd like to join our group, can you put your email in the chat so that we can
Sure.
add you to our group? That would be, and Michelle, don't forget to do that. I didn't check, to put your email so we can invite you to join the group. Young. Are you able to do a little intro? Can you hear? Okay. It's not coming through, your sound is not coming through. And I see you muted. So you could introduce yourself in the chat. We all know you. And oh, here you are. I see you.
Hi, apologies. I'm in the subway. My name is Young-san, based in New York and Maine.
All right. Yeah, and he co-facilitates with us on our group. And I know you've been really, really busy. So thank you for joining. So now we go back to our Q&A with Christine. If when you have a question, you can raise your hand through the reactions. I don't see one. I do see one. I see two. Okay, David, you're next.
Well, first, thanks, Christine. I appreciate both the visuals and also your, analysis and hearing about the dream at the very beginning too. I think is a reminder to us all. And I want to follow up on the reframing that, I think my own sense is much of the Biden administration right now is focused on a huge domestic agenda. And so they've chosen not to make a big deal out of foreign policy. But that makes it hard as we approach an election year and the election cycle when domestic priorities get harder. But I really appreciate the way you sort of talked about women leading in terms of demilitarizing the budget, because that is one of the few people say there's no bipartisan efforts in Congress, but in fact, there's a huge bipartisan effort that's disastrous. So thank you for sharing that. But I want to share something from my experience with Afghanistan, because I do a lot of work on Afghanistan, that the administration actually finally did what was long overdue of leaving, of exiting. And it was not so much Congress as it was the kind of warmongering media, the think tanks and so I'm wondering if your thoughts about how we can push Korean peace with not just with Congress, but also with think tanks that have all these retired generals, which is a big push. But like, what are some strategies we could develop in terms of pushing the media to lift up more really the voices of Koreans crying out for peace, but also, as you suggest, the possibility of Korea Peninsula being a model for the region?
Oh, David, if I knew the answer to that, I would be an incredible peace activist. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, think about how much money goes to the think tanks. That is just a revolving door. I mean, I look at the two top people that have been quoted opposing the end of war declaration. They are Robert Abrams, who was the former head of the UN command, US forces in Korea, and Harry Harris, who was the former ambassador in the Trump administration to South Korea, who was the former head of the US Indo-Pacific Command. So now they're retired, they're no longer serving, and now they're probably making a fortune working at these various think tanks or privately to Lockheed Martin or whatever to sell more THAAD missiles. So I think that is a huge call for us as a peace movement to call out the military industrial complex. I mean, I think what's so interesting is there's actually going to be an expose that will come out in the Nation by the Quincy Institute researcher. His name is Eli. Oh my God, what is his name? Anyway, Eli Clifton is doing a great expose on the financing of the this is so weird, but basically there is an oligarch who is Korean American, and she has been financing the right-wing opposition to us, to our peace movement. She lives here in Honolulu in a $4 million condo. And she has personal benefit because she wants to see South Korea turn nuclear. And so I just think that it's so interesting to see that we could see it one of two ways. One is that it's the power of the military industrial complex, which includes the think tanks and the generals and everybody who has to benefit economically from perennial war. But it also, I think, shows that we have power, that we actually are mobilizing. And right now, like, even though as much as I want to see, I hope that the Biden administration, I mean, part of the withdrawal from Afghanistan is because of the US pivot to Asia, I mean, that's been in the works for a long time, and he had the courage to do so. And we saw the massive pushback in the media and the warmongers. But I think part of the attacks on us, on the Korea Peace Now movement, on Women Cross TMZ, on me personally, is a result of our effectiveness. And I think we got to keep doing what we're doing, which is we're not just saying this is for peace on the Korean Peninsula, but it's because we need resources at home. I mean, we've seen all the statistics that say Americans are tired of endless war. I think our challenge is to say the Korean War is actually the longest war. Afghanistan was not, it's actually Korea. And it's what inaugurated the military industrial complex. It's what set the US to become the world's military police. And we're sick of it. And the Korean people are sick of it. And I think if we can keep lifting up that narrative, people like Bill, who served in Korea, surviving Korean War veterans that say I spoke to one today. He was like, it's time to end this Korean War. He was there in Korea when the armistice was signed. He said, I thought we would have ended this war 70 years ago. So I think if we could keep hammering home that point and, doing what we're doing. I mean, look at all the new people that joined today. I think that's so beautiful. It's, look at this snapshot. This is happening all around the country. And if we can keep bringing a new friend like Michelle today, you're like, I'm here as a friend. I mean, this is how we build a movement. And thank you so much for joining. But this is what it's going to take. And you all are, the heart and soul of it.
Okay, that's great answer. So Earl, and then William,
Yes.
you'll go.
Christine, you mentioned the US military occupation of South Korea, which is a great meme. And I know the pushback of it is going to be, oh, but the South Koreans want us there. They invited us there. And which goes into the whole question of South Korean politics. Could you say a word about that, and maybe even give us your take on the March election in South Korea?
Oh God, Earl, where do you even begin with that one? You know the situation. So for many of you that may or may not know, South Korea still has a national security law. It's been in place since the Korean War. It basically says that anybody that has any pro-North Korean views can be imprisoned and fined. And it's basically what has allowed the Cold War to continue on the Korean Peninsula. I think the Korean Americans that have family on the Korean Peninsula know this issue very well, that anybody that is considered pro-peace is considered a communist. I know that sounds so crazy. You have Moon Jae-in, who is the president that served in the military, who was actually at the DMZ in this incident, this famous incident of chopping down the tree, and served that country, is considered a communist for his pro-peace engagement with North Korea. So that's the context. Now, what's going to happen with the elections in South Korea this March? We don't know. It's a very tight race. But our hope, and I mean, I've been following the news. Lee Jae-myung, who is the governor of the Gyeonggi province, is the Democratic candidate. He is leading in the polls, still too close to call. Yoon Suk-yeol, who is the conservative candidate, we would see obviously drastically different inter-Korean engagement policies as a result of this election. And I'm sure that the Biden administration is also biding time. Now, to your question, Earl, about, from our perspective as a peace movement, we have to call for the end of US military exercise. We also have to call for the end of the forever US military presence in South Korea. I know that's tricky because the way that the narrative is in South Korea, it's really up to the South Koreans to decide whether they want the US to stay. That's for the people to decide. But I think the more that we can call for it as justification for reducing our military footprint, reducing our Pentagon spending, reducing our forever military presence around the world, that gives the South Koreans, especially the peace movement in South Korea, more political coverage. So, for example, there is a woman that is one of our core partners. She works for WILPF in South Korea, and she and I have worked together for 20 years on challenging U.S. military bases. And this is what she says. She says, okay, as the campaign head of the Korea Peace Now campaign, we have to be careful, because what happened when Trump met with Kim Jong-un, the first thing when he came back after he signed the Singapore Declaration, what did we see? We saw the Democrats introduce a resolution that limited the number of troops to be capped at 22,000. So it's this crazy thing. And it just shows that the military industrial complex is in power in Washington, D.C. But I think that's where us as a peace movement, where we say, especially in the US, we need to close down the US bases because we need funds at home. We need better resources for our communities. And so I think the more we can use that kind of framing, it gives a lot of political cover to the peace movement in South Korea.
That's great. We have Bill and then Ron Yee. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I recently spoke with a World War II veteran, and we were talking about endless war. And he said, why do we have to be the policemen of the world? And I know for a fact that we have 750 bases around the world. For an example, Okinawa. Why do we have so many guys in Okinawa? But my main concern is right now is the poverty and how we're contributing to the poverty in North Korea, and these sanctions that we have on them, and other countries we have sanctions on. And I'm part of, I don't want to say we, I know I am part of it because I pay my taxes. And if I take that money out of there, they'll put me in jail.
Yep.
I don't pay that money to go over there and have those people be without food and nourishment and shelter. I served in South Korea, and wonderful people, hardworking, and just, to me, it was like a humbling experience. I didn't realize it at the time, but I just wondered if you all agree that I think that diplomacy, and know who was sending over there. Know who it is, not some guy, oh yeah, Joe Blow, we don't know who the hell he is. And diplomacy and this movement here You start and you don't stop. You do not stop. I hope it goes on and past my lifetime. So do you agree with the diplomacy and what we're doing? Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Bill, for talking about the sanctions. And, you know, me too. I mean, that's the voices of who can't speak up about the situation and about the impact of the unresolved war. So thank you. I absolutely agree that, you know, we have to end the war, and especially for the people in North Korea who are living in under those really difficult conditions.
Okay, so Ranyi,
Yeah.
go ahead with your question.
Oh, thank you. I heard idea of Korea being Switzerland of Asia. I just love that idea. And this is the first time I heard, but I was dreaming about it. And could you elaborate that little bit on it, on that subject?
Oh,
Please.
gosh, Ronnie, I think I need to spend some time to actually formulate concretely how this can happen, because it seems so impossible. But I mean, there have been many times, right, in the last 30 years where the two Koreas have come to the table, where they have said, it's time to transform this war and transform Korea into a land of peace. And if Korea could agree to not align with the US or China, to commit to reduction of arms spending, what would that do for that region that is just a tinderbox, that is continuing to arm at an insane rate? And I'm not sure, but I think that we in the United States can play an important role to support that vision. And the first step is we have to get our Biden administration to end the Korean War. And that is, I know it sounds so impossible, but 2023 is the 70th anniversary of the armistice agreement. And I think we have to, right now, we're still in a pandemic. It's hard to think about actually meeting or doing an action at the DMZ, but I think we can start planning something. And I think that 2023, let's transform that year from the no more armistice and yes to a peace agreement. So I don't know, Rania, but what I'm hearing based on this call is I need to write an article about how peace on the Korean Peninsula could be the great neutralizer in the great power competition. So anybody wants to put their heads together with me, I would welcome that.
Oh my God, that would be just so good.
Yeah.
So Christine, I want to check with you on time.
Yeah, to pick up my daughter in a little bit.
So we have about like 2 more minutes. Do you, maybe you'd like to just wrap up if you need to go at 7? And is there any last words that you have? I mean, I was really struck by what you said, when things look a little impossible, that's when the women have to show up. I think it's not just women, it's imagination and dreams. And that's what I took away from your talk. And sometimes we become so practical and we get weighed down by all of the legislative, lobbying, and we aren't thinking beyond. So I don't know if you could say some words about how our network at a local level can maintain that dream or create our own dream and bring that forward.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Sally. Well, I don't know. I think we dream it up together. We envision and we sew and we weave together a plan. But I just want to say thank you to all of you for being on this call. I don't know, it's just, you look at the Zoom And it's, look at the multi-generational, multiracial. It's just so beautiful. This is what makes this peace movement like worth doing. This is what gives us life meaning. And together we're envisioning not just peace on the Korean Peninsula, but a different future for our country, for our communities, our families. And, you know, I go back to that quote or that statistic from the Eurasia Group. So many, what is it? Like 70% of people, 2/3, sorry, more than that, 2/3 of Americans under 30 believe that the way to deal with the rising tensions with China is to reduce US military presence. What a hopeful thing. And that's because of all of you guys, the peace movement, you know, of really hammering home the legacy, the trauma that is caused by endless war. So we're doing this together. I can't thank you enough for being my inspiration and being my juice to keep going. We are a powerful movement. And I think that many people are actually looking to our movement for really democratizing US foreign policy away from endless war. So thank you so much for inviting
Thank
me
you.
and giving me the
Thank
shot
you.
in the arm to keep going.
And vice versa.
Okay, great. I'll see you guys at the premiere of the national screening of Crossings.
Thank you.
Okay, lots of love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.